Welcome to the KINGSBEAT podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We are a Blue Wire podcast brought to you by Prize Picks. Joining me today, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. I really enjoyed the Oscars last night.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Usually the Oscars can be a little bit of a drag, but thought it was a lot of fun. Love the performances. Billie Eilish and even Ryan Gosling. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, that was fun too. Yeah,
didn't need to see John Cena come out the way he did, although that was pretty funny.
it was funny. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah,
It's
not a lot of surprises. Not a lot of surprises in those winners.
Yeah.
And I know Brendan probably saw. I'm going to take a guess. Don't tell me, Brendan. You haven't seen a single movie that was nominated.
I couldn't tell you what was nominated.
Oh, all right. Well,
so probably not.
Maybe we should introduce Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
I'm good. I was clearly locked in to the Oscars as well last night. And just want to share before we press record, I'm drinking a Dr. Pepper here, and Sean is trying to tell me there's prune juice in it. And that's the most old man thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I caught myself.
No
That's
way.
an urban myth, evidently.
God, I looked it up. It says a myth since the 1930s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that when you heard it?
Oh, sick burn.
Look what he did. Look what he did.
Sick burn. All right, let's jump into a couple of things. Number one, we are, of course, brought to you by Prize Picks. If you are so inclined, join us on Prize Picks. I'm still having a good time. I think at this point, I really enjoy watching Matt George squirm when he does Prize Picks, because that's one of my favorite parts about Prize Picks is that he gets very into it. But I think a bunch of us here in the media are having a good time doing it as well. You can go to the link down below. If you type in the password, which is KINGSBEAT, all one word, it makes you, I think they match up to $100 on your first installment. And for me, like, look, it's been a good time. It's not always easy. I probably shouldn't choose 6 picks every single night. That's probably the worst thing possible, but it doesn't matter. I'm just having a good time with it and making it part of my evening. I think I got slaughtered yesterday. I think I got 2 right. And out of all the people you think I would guess right, who do you think actually lived up to their performance from the Prize Pick last night?
Was he had the Keegan Murray dunk?
I didn't have the Keegan Murray dunk.
It's a different starter.
I had Kevin Huerter with a goblin, which is an extremely difficult number of 2.5, and I chose more, and he had 3 assists. So shout out Kevin Huerter and his 3 assists.
Big time.
The rest of the night went very poorly. So again, check out Prize Picks. It's cool. Having a good time doing it. It's one of those things. Gamble, not gamble. Play respectfully.
Pick responsibly.
Pick responsibly. There it is.
Was there? I wonder if you could have done the Oscars on Prize Picks. I would have probably done pretty well, actually. And actually, on that topic, Brendan, these were the nominations. You just hold up a finger every single time.
Pull it up. Okay.
Here we go. Oppenheimer. They won.
Yes.
You saw that? Okay. Wow. All right. Holdovers.
No clue.
Okay. American Fiction.
No.
Zone of Interest.
No.
Barbie.
Yes, actually.
Okay, you got 2. Poor Things.
No. I think you told me to watch that one.
I did tell you to watch that. Past Lives.
No.
Anatomy of a Fall.
Nope.
Maestro.
Nope. Maestro.
And Killers of the Flower Moon.
Nope. Another one you told me to watch.
I did. So I've seen 5.
I only saw 4.
Ooh. All right.
How many did you see,
I feel like
Sean?
2 is a good number for
I
me.
saw 5.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed
number for him though.
I don't know. Poor Things was very unique, Sean.
I told you.
And very graphic. Not exactly the movie that my wife and I thought we were getting into when we sat down to watch it like this weekend.
Not a kids movie. Definitely not a kids movie.
No, definitely not a kids movie. And
sounds like an interesting metaphor for the 23-24 Kings.
Borderline
They're not safe for work.
borderline above rated R. Like,
No,
I don't know.
No, I don't know about
No?
that. No. You think it should have got an NC-17?
I thought it was close at times.
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
Well, now
like
I'm curious.
Now,
there you
Brennan,
go.
he's all in.
Yes. If you like Emma Stone, there you go.
I do like Emma Stone.
All right. Well, don't
I'll report back next podcast.
don't say that we never helped you out, Brenden.
Which movie is this again?
Yeah.
Poor Things.
All right.
Poor
great.
Things. Poor Things. You can watch it right now, I believe, on Hulu if you have Hulu or Disney Plus. There you go.
It's not on Disney
okay.
Plus.
Welcome into the King's Beat. It is on Disney Plus, but it's not.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it is. It's on
Oh.
Disney Plus. It's not your standard Disney Plus movie, is where I would say. I would hope that people have their parental controls on their Disney Plus, and they don't have their kids. Like, that would be awkward to walk in to see your kids watching that movie. All right. Thanks for tuning in to the KINGSBEAT podcast. We've got all kinds of things to talk about. Number one, if you're watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. That's always appreciative. We probably should have live streamed on Twitter today, because for the last week, Twitter has lost its mind, and all of a sudden we are getting like it's gone crazy. Like, so many views on Twitter with other stuff that I do. So I'm not sure what's going on there. But we are not live streaming. We're doing this show like we normally do, and recording and then posting later. So thumbs up, become a subscriber, subscribe to the King's Beat, go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber so you get everything shipped right to your inbox. Let's get to this, because first of all, I want to somehow, I don't know how, but Alperen Şengün, we have now found out, did survive. Did not have a catastrophic injury yesterday in the Kings game. So that's good news. I'm sure it's a grade 3+ ankle sprain. And it's a bone bruise in his knee, but it sounds like there's no full-fledged structural damage, which is crazy, because I thought we were probably going to get something horrible today, like a torn ACL and like a broken lower leg. But scary fall against the Sacramento Kings on Sunday. The entire arena went quiet with like 39 seconds remaining. The Kings were very clear that that wasn't Sabonis's fault, that it actually was his teammate who fouled everybody, sort of. But that's good news. But the bad news is the Kings lost to the Rockets. And Brenden, we'll start with you. Just like, what's your overall take on this continued Jekyll and Hyde season that we get? Big wins followed by these absolutely, disappointing losses to teams that you shouldn't lose to.
Yeah, I mean, we said it last episode, and I probably should have been on board a while ago, but this is just who they are. Like, I think when you are a team that is extremely reliant on your offense and very poor defensively, which is what they've been most of the year, but specifically post All-Star break, I want to say they're 26th in defensive rating, and I think they just fell to 5th in offense. Still solid after only putting up 104 against the Rockets. But, a night like that night, for example, you don't hit threes, you turn the ball over, and defensively, it's tough for you to go out there and get stops consistently. So I feel like when you are a team that is so reliant on your offense, there's just some inconsistency that's going to come with that. Shots can't go down every night. And sometimes you're going to struggle against Houston and Miami. They felt like similar games, teams that pack the paint a lot. And the Kings, part of their game plan coming in is, okay, we need to get a lot of spray threes. Don't get too deep into the paint. That's how turnovers will happen. And sure enough, that's exactly what ended up happening in this game. Domas specifically, Sabonis has 9 of them. That's short. That's second highest of the season. First is 11 against the Charlotte Hornets, which is not great. But I think that's what it comes down to for me. Is it's a team that's extremely reliant on their offense. And you look at their 7 worst 3-point percentage showings of the year, they've lost every single game. They just can't survive nights where they're not rolling on offense because the defense isn't there, in my mind.
Not much more to add after that. I mean, he nailed it. Like, I will point out this, and Mike Brown did as well. And think people should probably go back and listen to Mike Brown's comments, especially today, if not last night, but pointing out, I think it does tend to take away a little bit of the argument of how bad Houston is and how they should have walked in and won that game. And there's just such a thing as a team that just has your number, or, bad matchups. Certainly we've seen it with the Pelicans, but some of those teams with size and athleticism have obviously been the bugaboo for the Kings. And I don't think the Rockets are any different. And for as bad as the Rockets are, they're young, they're physical, they're hungry, but they defend really, really well. And I don't think they get enough credit for that. Certainly they're not this juggernaut. And even if they got into the play-in tournament, I think that would be a little bit far-fetched. But they are a really good defensive team. And so they are fully capable of having moments like they have against the Kings, who tend to wilt when physicality is thrown their way. So it's alarming, but it's not like, it doesn't alarm me as much as I think a lot of other people, because I've already kind of accepted who they are. And again, I still think in a playoff series, it's easier to adjust over the course of a series with days off in between than it is in the course of a regular season. I think teams like this for the Kings are particularly harder to match up against when you're playing a team one night, preparing for another team another night. So not to take away from it, it's still going to go down as a disappointing loss, as it should, but it's just kind of who they are. And we last week we were talking about it. Oh yeah, they'll beat the Lakers, they'll lose to the Spurs. Well, they almost lost to the Spurs, and even when they did beat the Spurs, nobody really felt like that was a win. That there was an ugly win, and no one should have been happy about that win, because they looked terrible, and they played that game without Victor Wembanyama. And then what happens? Well, the Spurs go down to Golden State, a team that doesn't have Steph Curry, and they take Devin Vassell out of that game, and they beat the Warriors. So it happens in the NBA. It's part of the roller coaster that Kings fans and these players go through. But again, if you want a little bit of bright kind of optimism, and I'm not usually the guy to do it, but you've won 2 of your last 3. You've won 3 of your last 5. I mean, they're able, if you're looking at it from a very broad scope, and I think that's the healthy thing to do as you go into the playoffs, and especially with so many home games remaining in this month of March, like, look at it as a broader view, try to coast off of the roller coaster a little bit, and just look at it from a bird's eye and say, hey, you're right around 10 games over 500, and last night's loss takes you down to 9, but realize the fact that you're still got a comfortable cushion. It's just the West is so much better. And nothing that I've seen over these past week or so, this game against Houston the other night, makes me think any better or less about the Kings and where they stand. Like, I still think that they could be a tough out in the playoffs. I still think that they'll stay outside of the play-in tournament, but it's a roller coaster, because even on a night like tonight, as we record this on Monday, they're not playing tonight. They've got the Bucks tomorrow. They'll probably win that game based off of the way that they've gone against top tier opposition this year. But even if they don't, like, even games where they are not playing, they're able to move up the standings because of the failure or the success of other teams in the West that's hovering around them right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to point out that this is a trait that is almost league wide this season. Like, there are a bunch of teams that lose to their opponents when starters or stars are sitting. I mean, we saw it last week. The Clippers lost to the Bucks. They led by 20, no Giannis, no Middleton, and they lost. And that's just kind of the way this season has gone. Like, I get the whole, no lead is safe in the NBA at this point. 20-point leads come and go all the time. And I totally get that. But it just feels like there's so many games this season where the Kings aren't ready for the physicality. They can't step up to the physicality. And I would like to tell you that that's going to play out okay in the playoffs and that you make adjustments. But if you're not physical in the playoffs, you're going to get bounced. You're going to get your ass kicked if you're not physical. And if you can't be physical on a Sunday afternoon where a win puts you into contention for the 5th spot, but really solidifies you as a number 6 spot against a marginal team, then what makes you think that they're going to be A-OK on April 17th when they walk into a playoff series and the physicality cranks up? I that's where I don't see it. I mean, I get what Mike's done all season was try to push this defensive mindset, and I think Mike got the memo at the trade deadline that they weren't going to add defensive players, that they wanted him to play better offense, and so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the team is cranking up their offensive, sort of like who they are. I'm not sure why they didn't do that all season long, to be honest. Like, they should have been playing at the same tier they were last year and trying to add to the offense while improving on the defensive end, but that's not what we've seen. And this is still a team that's overly reliant on the three-point shot. They aren't particularly strong-willed or strong-minded, and they get beat by teams that come in and smack you in the face. And it's still kind of jarring to see. And like, I don't want to take away from what Houston's doing, because I kind of like they've sort of married the two timelines, right? They've got all these young players that are really good or that have tons of talent, and then they brought in some veterans that make a lot of sense. But you can't just say, oh, well, I guess you're not going to be able to beat the Houston Rockets. Oh, well, you're not going to be able to beat the Pelicans. Like, the fact that the Kings aren't even really all that competitive against some of these teams is just jarring, because I don't know how you become you go from good to great, which is the term we keep hearing, if you can't show up on certain nights against anyone who plays with physicality.
Well, and it's interesting to me that, we can sit and talk about Houston being a good defensive team. You look at their starting five. I mean, Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün are right there. They're both not good defenders. I think Domas is a better defender than Şengün. Jabari Smith Jr. is a good defender. He's young. I think he's like about on par with Keegan so far this year. And then there's Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. And Dillon Brooks is really the one that stands out to me. And VanVleet is a good defender in his own right. But Mike Brown even talked pregame about the importance of having a guy like that, a Dillon Brooks or a Draymond Green, and the edge and sort of just will they bring and infect the rest of the roster with. And he also mentioned in that, if the other team has a guy that you feel like you can hunt, that you're going into that game feeling pretty aggressive. And I will say Kevin Huerter's been getting hunted recently. That felt like maybe something there. But it is interesting to me that you can look at a roster like Houston's that does not feel that much more defensively talented than Sacramento's. And there is such a ridiculous gap between the two.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Dillon Brooks and sort of that mentality. Like, the Kings have been searching for that since like Ron Artest left. Like, that's one thing that the Kings have never. I mean, Sean and I have covered teams where they bring in like Reggie Evans to be your enforcer, and it's like, okay, like, I get that if you would have brought in Reggie Evans like 5 years earlier, that would have been fine. But that's kind of been like a theme with this team throughout the last 15, 17 years, right? They don't have that guy. And I think Dillon Brooks probably would have been a really, really good addition this summer. He's a player who plays hard, who goes in, he's got an attitude, he's got an edge, and you can dislike some of the antics and the crap that he pulls and his inefficiency as a player and all that stuff. But at the same time, like, the Kings have to find that. And I don't think, like, we keep hearing they have a bunch of nice guys. They do have a bunch of nice guys. They need a couple of not nice guys. And
they need a dickhead. Every team has a dickhead. Every good team has a dickhead, and they need one. And
I think they do, though, Sean. They have him. He's just an offensive dickhead, and that's Malik Monk.
Malik Monk, yeah.
He's hilarious, and he's not a bad. Like, we love Malik. Don't get me wrong, but he's got the personality that I don't give an F personality that this Kings team needs. He's just the offensive version. He's not the defensive version of it, and that's something that they lack. Sorry.
Well, and yeah, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, he gives them an identity. He gives them that kind of that swagger for sure. But you're right. He's really like the only guy outside of Fox and Sabonis that will go and get his. And it has a dramatic effect on that Kings team when he does it. And I've always argued that, and people have, probably grown tired of me saying how important he is to their success, because when he gives them that kind of vibe, it's infectious. It spreads. Like, you know what you're getting from Fox. You know what you're getting from Sabonis. He just can't turn the ball over. He just can't be that. You embrace the gift and the curse that is Malik Monk, but more times than not, he's the gift, and he's a hell of a gift. And last night, I talked to him about it today, because last night you could tell he was pissed off. He was pissed off that it wasn't just that the way they were playing, it's the fact that they got outworked. And that's what he went out of his way to say today, which was they got outworked. And I said, do your teammates share that? And he says, no, they show it differently. He says, but they're right there. Malik is obviously an emotional type player where he doesn't have a good poker face. You see everything, whether he's, snarling at everyone, whether he's being jovial, whether he's pissed off, whether he's whatever it is, you're seeing it. He doesn't have a poker face like Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray has the ultimate, I don't know what you're thinking right now.
Yeah, and Sean, I think it's funny because Trey Lyles has been kind of like hit over the last week with, I don't know, did anyone see him on the bench in the win over San Antonio, where
Yeah, when he's just
everyone
kinda,
is celebrating, and and
Kevin
then you
too.
see, well, okay, so this is where we get into, like, it's more complicated than that. And so you saw Trey Lyles sitting there, and he's sitting on the bench at the end of the game. Like, Trey was pissed because his team didn't show up and because they weren't being accountable like they'd all talked about. That's why Trey was pissed. Trey
yeah.
was pissed about the fact that it took a Domantas Sabonis, like, first of all, Zach Collins, I don't even know what's going on there, but everyone in the building sees Greg Popovich telling Zach Collins to go step up and go give an outlet pass so he can become a screener in the play, right? Including Domantas Sabonis, who's watching Greg Popovich like yell at his center to like run up and go set the screen, or go get open for his guy, right? And so then Sabonis grabs the ball and runs down, dunks it, and the Kings win. But I think it's okay to be angry that the accountability aspect of this team is not being taken serious. And it's something we talked about Trey like the next day. And we didn't like blatantly say, "Hey, Trey, why did you look so pissed on the sidelines?" But that's why. And then Brenden, you bring up Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter, I believe, is pissed about a completely different thing. And that's not the same as what Trey was. Trey is upset because they almost let one slip away. Kevin Huerter wasn't happy because he got lambasted by Domantas Sabonis during a timeout, and he was playing poorly and rode the bench. And I like, that's what that looked like. And I, not to call Kevin Huerter out, he's having like a very, very bad season, like half the time. Like, he's just so inconsistent. And again, it's not like these guys want to be inconsistent or they want to miss shots. I'm not saying that that's like Kevin's want to be good isn't there. It is, but he's frustrated. Everyone's frustrated, and it's playing out in different ways, if that makes sense. So you bring him up, and I just want to point out that I think it was a little different than what we saw from Trey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Kevin's, excuse me, definitely been struggling recently. 5 of his last 6 games, he's in single digits. You're seeing his minutes get cut pretty quickly. I do think he has a fairly short leash, and he gets targeted a lot. At the beginning of games, specifically, teams will come out and try to get Kevin directly involved in actions with their best offensive players, and teams have found success doing that. That's led to Keon Ellis being in games, or often Malik Monk is closing at the end of games. And Harrison Barnes is in this too. There's a lot of moments in these last really post All-Star break, and you could probably go beyond that, where maybe Kevin's not closing a game in favor of Malik, or Harrison's not closing in favor of Trey Lyles. And the accountability definitely stands out to me. But I think part of the concerning or confusing thing about this team is that it doesn't feel like anybody can really pin down the issue, right? Like, there are specifics of, we have to run more, we have to not get so deep in the paint, and these spray threes on offense, or being more physical on defense. But, trying to ask today, what's up with the home record, pretty much? Like, why do you guys think that you perform differently at home? And nobody has an answer,
No.
And same with these up and down inconsistencies. I think that's part of the frustrating, confusing thing, is it's extremely hard to pin down, it seems like, even internally.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've asked this a couple of times. Like, what is your identity? And who do you want to be? And I think what their answer is not who they are, right? Like what
Mike
they
would always
want.
say fast, physical, and together.
Yeah. Do you see togetherness?
Comes and goes.
Connected is their word of the year.
Right.
That's not what I see. I don't see a connected team. Like some nights, but even then, like we haven't seen like the beautiful game from them. We haven't seen where it's all flowing and everything's working really well. At least not in a couple of months. So I don't know. It's a team that when they do have to win, it's almost got to be by grit. It's almost got to be forced into winning a specific way. And I think they, again, they can beat anybody. We've seen that, and they've got like their list of impressive wins on the season is crazy. But like you can't be a 7 seed and maybe not even make the playoffs because you can't win the easy ones. And that's going to be like what their gravestone says this year, at least at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're not wrong. I do wonder. I do think that the overall health and connectivity of the team, for the most part, is there. I think seeing the reaction of Trey Lyles, people have to realize that it's like if you had a thought bubble above Trey Lyles, in my opinion, he would have said, "Yeah, here we are. We just won this game. We probably shouldn't have, and now everyone's going to think we're okay when we're not." And that's part of the holding accountable moment. I don't think that takes away from the connectivity because, again, this team is the chemistry on this team is really top notch. But it'll be interesting to see when they meet adversity. And Coach Brown talked about that earlier in the season about he's like, hey, I want to see how we deal with this adversity when they went on that slide. And I think now when you're still seeing it, I think this team from top to bottom, yes, there's high expectations. Yes, the West is much more difficult this year than last year. But also knowing that they've had the good fortune of health on their side, knowing that they've been through this, I think there's some optimism to be had, but realizing also that they've been humbled quite a bit this season. And it wouldn't shock me by virtue of just the way they are on this roller coaster with the fans. Like I know a lot of fans will go through this, but I'm telling you, like seeing these players, they wear these losses, especially to the teams that shouldn't be beating them. They wear it pretty tough, pretty hard. And because of that, I think they realize the whole good to great mantra from earlier in the season. Well, you're not that team, and that's okay. It's okay. If it doesn't happen this year, that's fine. But you're still wanting to be on that path. It's just a little bit of a huge dose of humble pie to say, well, you're not there yet. That's okay. You can still get there. And again, by what they've done this season, I still think, would you bet on it? Probably not. But and look, we're seeing some crazy things in March right now. Did you see what happened to Sac State? Sac State didn't even have 10 wins on the tournament. They go into the Big Sky tournament. It is March. It is madness, and now they're in the semifinals, taking down the top team in the tournament. Now, granted, I've just used that as an overall thing to say we saw what the play-in tournament looks like last year. One team goes to the Western Conference Finals, another team goes to the NBA Finals. Things can happen.
And
I get that.
Point, they do always bounce back. Like they have a 3-game loss streak on 2 occasions, a 3-game loss streak and a 4-game loss streak. Outside of that, they haven't lost 2 in a row, or more than 2 in a row. Sorry, all year long. And even win streaks, like there's more impressive win streaks. There's a 6-game win streak. There's a 4-game, and there's 2 3-games. But I mean, these losses it's not like it typically snowballs from here, if that makes sense.
I would say too, like you bring up that they really haven't faced adversity. I would say that they have faced adversity, like because this is a team that is good enough that should have had an 8-game win streak and two or 3, 6, 7-game win streaks and a couple of 5-game win. Like this team is too talented.
James just turned them into a 70-win team.
No, I mean, but look at the season. Like you go back and look at the games that they've lost and where they land in the schedule. And if they wouldn't have blown a game against this team, there's a 5-game win streak. If they haven't blown, and it's not like
if they beat Miami, it's a 7-game win streak.
Yeah. And then what about, there's more than that though. Like how many 2 games and 2 games do they have with one loss in the middle that's against a bad team?
Charlotte is one of those. Atlanta,
Yeah.
Memphis win, lost to Charlotte, and then you beat Orlando, Toronto. The loss to Boston, I guess, doesn't count in there necessarily. But yeah, there's a couple of these for sure.
Yeah,
and it
that's
would
where
feel different. Wouldn't it feel different though, James? Sorry to interrupt, but it's like, all right, let's say you trade some of those wins, right? You trade a Charlotte, you trade a Houston, 2 of the Houston games, you trade whichever ones you want, the Detroit game, and now let's say you've lost 3 to Denver now. Let's say you've lost, like pick your poison, whichever one. Does it feel different, even though it's the same?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be more in line with who you are as in your build. So yeah, I mean, I think it would feel different. And again, it's to me, it's not just that you lose to these teams. It's like you already knew that you'd stacked too many of these losses. You know, you got 5 losses against that are just egregious bad losses, right? And now you can, I don't even know if you want to say a 6 at this point because Houston's different than who they were at the beginning of the season. But, you know, you've got the Blazers loss, you've got the Charlotte loss, you've got the Detroit loss. Like there's enough losses here. We can just like, we get it, right? But those are just like complacent losses. And so when you get to a game like this, where you understand that you're game 63 of the season and there's only 20 games left, and you've got 2 good wins under your belt, and you're going into this game knowing that you've got the Bucks and the Lakers coming up and the Knicks on Saturday, and things are about to get dicey here, and you really have to get a win. It's that they aren't able to show up when you know that it matters, when you know that it's a big opportunity. And so I like the inability to embrace success is really frustrating. And I can only imagine what it's like on their end, because again, like we know these guys, like they want to win. It's not like they're trying to trick off games. It's not like this is the the 15, 16 years of ineptitude seasons where you knew they were going to lose and they just didn't have a chance to win. This is a team that does know that they're quality, that they're 10 games over 500, around that. They just can't figure out how to a way to embrace what's happening and to sort of ride the wave of success.
Yeah. And again, I think the most frustrating part is like, why? And there's no answer. And at this point, you asked like earlier, what's their identity? Their identity is the inconsistent team, the team that you never know what you're going to get on a night-to-night basis. They might be the most prime example in the league. And like you said, blown leads happen a lot in the NBA, the modern NBA specifically. Pretty much a nightly basis, you're going to see a 15-point lead that's going to end up getting blown. But it's teams are going to go on runs. NBA is a game of runs, but the Kings need to, and we might have said this last episode, the Kings need to make sure that's a 6-minute run instead of an entire quarter or even less. They scored 14 points in the third quarter. Like the entire third quarter was a run for Houston, and it just cannot last that long.
Yeah, and when you're a relatively soft team, let's face it, even if you're a bad team, teams you've had some success last year, you've got some little bit of success this year, you've got some 2 guys that were all-stars last year and all NBA players. Like bad teams do get up for the Kings, you know. I mean, especially when they know that they can take it to you. I mean, the recipe for success against the Kings is to punch first and watch them wilt, disrupt Domas, hope they miss 3-pointers, and then you just roll the dice.
Yeah. I mean, the recipe is to just make them miss threes. I mean, like Brenden, you said it, what they're 0-7 in games where they shoot
their worst 3-point percentage.
Yeah, their worst 3-point.
7 worst. Yeah.
Yeah, 6 of 32. And I would love to tell you that it's all the Houston Rockets like stepping up and just making one great defensive play after another on the Kings shooters, but that's just not the case. Like you have good shooters who aren't hitting their shots. And that's been a problem the entire season. And they all take turns doing that. And then you had a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who's not career-wise a great shooter, shooting over his head, right? And so I think that in itself became its own issue. But at this point, you got to figure it out. I don't know. What do you guys expect? What do you like? Where do we go with the discussion? Because we kind of know who they are. We kind of know, but that doesn't mean that you just like throw your hands up in the air and say, okay, this season's over, or they're just going to get bounced. I mean, there's still a lot of room for growth. I was personally hoping to see like this really takeoff moment from Keegan Murray, and all of a sudden he's shrunk into a shell. I would love to see, Kevin Herter find himself, but again, that's not happening. The Harrison Barnes thing, one night he has a really, really quiet 17 points, and you look up and you're like, wait, how did that happen? And the next night, I thought even like early against Houston, he was super physical. He was getting to the line, all these things happen, and then poof, he disappears. And to me, it's just this really weird like feel with this team where you're waiting for somebody to lock back in and start being the player that you know that they are, but we haven't quite seen it happen. Like it just isn't. They're not in lockstep somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on quite a few of those. Kevin Herter though has been quite a conundrum, right? Like, I mean, I was just looking back. He's got one 20-point outing. His last 20-point outing was February 22nd. And prior to that, he didn't have one until January 18th when he scored 31.
Oof.
Now, there's double-digit scoring efforts in there, and there's one 18-point game, a 16-point game, a 17-point game. But by and large, I mean, he has 8 points over his last 3 games.
Well,
that
that's
is a
not
guy
gonna
in
cut
need
it.
of a slump buster in the worst way.
I don't
And
think
it
Brenden
might
knows what a
just
slump
take
buster is.
one game, right? I assumed a slump buster was a good game. Not gonna lie.
That's okay. We'll
Whatever
just
gets you
skip
there.
past it. Whatever
Yeah.
gets you there.
That's what I'm rolling with.
It's a term coined by Mark Grace, a first baseman for the Chicago Cubs. But we'll just move forward.
Mark Grace, of course, my favorite.
God, I hated him. As a Giants fan, I hated Mark Grace. Go ahead.
You guys keep talking. I have to plug in my laptop.
I do think that, like, for Kevin, he's and a guy that is such a shooter, and that's his main skill. Like, you're going to be a little bit of an up and down player. That's the nature of it. But he also seems like somebody that, the mental aspect might get to him a little bit. Like after the 3-point contest last year, you saw a slump for a while, or, that what he's in right now, I'm sure has got to get in your head a little bit. Even moments where, he knows that he has a shorter leash right now, I'm sure.
Yep.
And there's moments where I want to say it's in that San Antonio game where, he cuts to the basket really early in the game. Domas doesn't throw a great pass and it goes off his foot. And it's like that little stuff is probably even more frustrating for Kevin currently, because he's just trying everything he can out there to find a way to produce. So it could take one game to totally break him out of this. But at this point, I feel like you can't help but think there's a mental aspect here too.
Oh, I don't disagree when it comes to Herter. Like almost everything I think we're seeing right now is on the mental side. And I feel for him because he's frustrated. And he knows, Brenden, that he's getting picked on the defensive end. You can't hide from it. Like, it's not like they're not film studying and it's not getting pointed out that whether it's getting beat on the back cut or whatever it is, like there's no question that that's the problem. But I would say, like, for as much as we would say, oh, they pick on Kevin Herter and that's part of the reason. Like, look, that doesn't mean anything when at the end of the day, the Houston Rockets come in as like the 28th like worst 3-point shooting team in the league, and they light you up. And every single team in the league does. You're giving up 40% from behind the arc. And again, you can say, oh, well, Kevin Herter's defending probably 4 of those. But who's defending all the other ones? Who's not doing their job the rest of the time? And it's not just one player who's making a mistake and is causing this domino effect. It's who you are as a team, and teams come in knowing that, and then they light you up because they know you're bad at defending the 3. And, Mike can talk about closeouts and all that stuff, whatever it is, but there's some sort of disconnect because we're not seeing it on the floor every single time. Teams have hit great shots against the Kings, but NBA players hit great shots. That's the way it goes. I mean, we saw one of the craziest circuit shots ever by Malik Monk last night. Like, that had no business going in. Like, absolutely no business going in. That's the NBA, though, and especially when you give a player confidence and you let him start getting a couple of shots, next thing you know, that is sort of the snowball effect where it just gets out of control. How do you think that they rectify that? Because again, how many teams have we seen come in as the 30th or the 29th or the 28th? It's almost like that whole bottom half of the league that revolves around poor 3-point shooting. They all switch around, and then they all come to Sacramento and they get right, and they're no longer the worst 3-point shooting team in the league anymore.
We literally just got the 30th ranked and 29th ranked percentage teams, and they both put up how many, like over 40% on the Kings in San Antonio and Houston. How many times do you think a team has converted 40% or higher threes against the Kings this year?
I'm going to say
how many occasions?
How many games that a team has made 40% or more of their threes against the Kings?
35.
Sean?
At home or just in general?
In general.
Yeah. All right. Just to be different, I'll say 30.
Yeah, 29. 29.
Oh,
which
Sean
is
wins.
Not great. Frankie looked it up earlier. Only the Spurs have allowed more 40% or higher 3-point percentage games from opponents.
Now, can you look at that? How many of those have happened in Golden One Center?
I can attempt to here. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, see, that's a good question.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 of the 29.
Half. Oh, half.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. 50-50. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, teams come in and shoot the lights out in Golden One.
Yeah, and like Kings are 11 and 18 in those games.
Oh, yeah, that's not great.
But I don't know what the answer is. Like, I'm glad that you mentioned the Kevin thing, or it not being just Kevin, because it's not. It's the rotations that go on with this team, where being on a string, you hear that term a lot, is so important, specifically with how they play their defense. They're trying to keep guys out of the middle of the floor. Sabonis is going to be really high up, meaning another guard on the other side or forward is going to have to come over and stop the big, and kind of all the rotations from there. And when you're reactionary instead of predictive, and you already know what your rotation is going to be, just that half second late makes all the difference with these 3-point shooters in today's league. When you're talking about guys that are 6'8", 6'6", good 3-point shooters, or even if they're shorter out there, there's so many good 3-point shooters, and it's really everybody. Like, Kevin wouldn't look as bad if he had a backline rim protector, and De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter said it when he was on the point forward, the Evan Turner and Iguodala pod, that Fox might be the biggest flip a switch guy in the league defensively. There's moments where he's like, God, you just let him middle way too easily on that closeout. And then there's other moments where he's totally locking up and looks great. Harrison Barnes, very up and down, with a lot of downs in there, to be honest. And so it's definitely not just Kevin, but it's this being on a string that is so rare to see on this Kings team. There's two guys going to the ball, and that leaves another guy open, or thinking that it's somebody else's responsibility, and all of a sudden you're looking and staring at them, both of you guys. So it's definitely not just Kevin.
Yeah, and I would also, like, one of the problems the Kings have is that, you have to protect Domas, right? And a lot of times that means, like, you've got to try to not let guys go inline drive at Domas, because that's when he picks up his cheap fouls. That's typically when Sabonis gets in foul trouble. So I find that the Kings, to protect Domas, they shrink the court a little bit. They do play more inside and try to keep guys from getting the paint touches and stuff like that. And then that ends up lending itself to these crazy 3-point shots, or open 3-point shots, not even crazy, just open 3-point shots. And they're slow to rotate. They're slow to rotate out of their, like, base defense. I don't know how to fix it. I don't, but at 63 games into the season, you're kind of run out of time to fix it. And so at this point, it's kind of like, just do what you can to get better. Because, I mean, in all honesty, one of the answers is to just play Keon Ellis a whole bunch. Like, Keon Ellis almost single-handedly, like, plays defense on the perimeter better than anyone else that they have. And the other answer is to find another defensive-minded player like Keegan Murray, 6'8", 6'9", long wingspan, that can actually take some of the slack off of Keegan, so he's not out there having to defend the best person and then still trying to be an offensive player as well. So
Well, and
I think that there are ways to do this, but
but
none of
it
them
also
are like
doesn't
great.
it also doesn't result. It's not like it doesn't mean you're gonna win.
No, it just means
So,
that you stopped. You're the
yeah,
Dutch boy.
or
You plug one
you've
leak, and then another one's gonna pop
right,
up. Yeah.
right. You've done something to address that issue, and yeah, it's doesn't even. It also, I mean, as much as it sounds like it could work, it also doesn't mean that it would even address that even its own situation.
Well, and even like a guy like Dylan Brooks, like would be good defensively. The issue is you're still an offensive team in general that's so predicated on their ball movement, player movement, and high IQ game. And I don't know that he fits into that great. Like it's so hard to find a guy that fits into both, right? And that's why, like, I think Keon does more offensively than Chris Duarte, and I think that's probably why they've gone in that direction a little bit more, or it's why it's so big that Davion is knocking down the three at a high rate recently. And it's just so hard to find guys that do both, when I think having high IQ and reading and reacting offensively is just like a staple for this team offensively.
Yeah. I mean, again, like Mike Brown is a better head coach than than any of the three of us, and it feels like he's
Facts.
not
It's
figuring
true.
it out. Like again, like or he's not being able to get his players to figure it out on the fly. I think it's complex. Like I don't know how else to say it. Like again, I think we're flummoxed by this team just like they are, just like everyone involved is. But I also know that like this team moving forward, you have to find better defensive players, number one. And number two, you need to find somebody that you compare with Keegan Murray. So Keegan isn't exhausted like he is today because he's literally defending Steph Curry one night, and then the next night, whoever the toughest the toughest offensive player is on the next team, he's defending, whether it's Kawhi Leonard or you just name it. Like
Wait,
Keegan,
what?
like in my
He's
opinion,
exhausted.
yeah, to me, Keegan looks exhausted. Like, look at his shooting numbers, look at his offensive numbers. Keegan is putting everything he has into the defensive end. You have to find somebody that can take some of the defensive load off of him so he can actually be an offensive player as well. Again, I think Keegan in year
Why?
two, why? Because I don't think like if you want him to be an 18 to 20 point per game guy, you're gonna have a really tough time getting him there.
Why?
If he's got to defend Steph Curry on the offensive end the entire night, and every other great offensive player, like it's tough. Like you need two of them. You need two of those guys so
I,
they can
I,
take turns.
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you on the like you need better defense overall, but the strides he's taken defensively to insinuate that that's a negative to his offensive game, I think is not. Am I
Oh,
understanding that right? I don't think that that's. I don't think
oh
that
no, I
that's
think there's a direct
accurate.
correlation between him having to defend for 36 minutes, like whoever the toughest cover is on the other team, and what we're seeing from him on the offensive end. Like I
Well, I
think
mean, he's also in year two. You know
Well,
what I
no,
mean?
that's what I
And
think.
like,
He'll grow into who he's gonna be. Like,
and I
I don't
think
have any
him,
concerns with him.
but him being a two-way player is only going to be to his benefit and to the team's benefit. Like I think him. I think it's on him to take shots. Like this is such a. You don't see Mike Brown call a lot of plays as it is. It's what they are offensively. You spray to threes, dribble handoff, Domas, two-man game, all that stuff. Um, he has to want it. He has to be the guy to do it. I don't think he's tired. I would say he's banged up. Dylan Brooks stepped on his ankle yesterday. He's had a little bit of shoulder thing with whatever's going on with his shoulder. The nicks and grinds of an NBA season, but for a second year player, I think he's shown tremendous growth. Like I think I would agree with you, James. I think he needs to maybe show that he wants it a little bit more and recognize the green light because it's never gone away. But I think that's more on Keegan than anything else.
I
Well,
do
yeah.
think the defense could be affecting the offense a bit there when it comes to effort levels. But like, I think that again, he's a second year guy and this is part of the process. And I'm definitely with Sean that like offensively, he just kind of has to go get it. And so maybe he is a little tired defensively, and that could be affecting his aggressiveness offensively. I haven't had that thought, but if that is the case, like, again, I think it's part of the process that he's got to learn to be able to do both. There are guys that are 20-point per game scorers that are playing good defense. So Chris Middleton, that everybody loves to compare him to. You could go down the list. Jimmy Butler, there's a bunch of guys in the league that are able to do both. And these are all-star caliber players that, maybe Keegan won't get to, but I think that's the hope. And I think that what he's been able to do defensively is, like, the offense is still there, and I think that it's just a learning process for both to kind of coexist together. That, in my mind, is fairly natural for a second-year guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with his offensive game. I would just say, like, on the season, he really doesn't look all that much different than he was last year. He's averaging like 2.3 shots more per game. Last year he averaged 6.3 3-point attempts. This year he's at 6.1. The difference is last year he shot 41.1%. This year he's shooting 35.5. Like, he hasn't, from the start of the season, been able to find his true rhythm on the as a 3-point shooter like what we saw last year. And I get it that he needs to be more aggressive on the offensive end, but I also, I don't think he walked into this year thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be a defensive juggernaut and realistically one of like 2 defensive players on this team overall, and I'm going to get stuck defending the most ridiculous player every single night, and then whatever I get to score offensively is like an added bonus." And that's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, I
Like
mean, I'll tell you this. Sorry, I'll tell you this. People I've talked to, they thought if he could replicate the season he had last year, that would be a tremendous success. Because he had such a phenomenal rookie season. And I think him going out there, his scoring is still up from what he averaged last year. And recognize right now, he's, especially in this month of March, like, it's troublesome. I think the 3-point shooting is obviously down because he was a 41% shooter last year when he finished, but still scoring is up. And I think he's finding other ways to score, which is one of the most, to me, encouraging signs, considering criticisms of maybe being able to ISO and take guys off the dribble and get into the paint and uses his length to shoot over people and not just have to solely rely on the perimeter. I love that. I think that's a huge step in the right direction. But arguing that also that with the defensive stuff that he's gone, especially with going up against smaller players, because that's typically when he's used on the primary the primary star option on the other team is primarily when it's a player that's smaller than him and not a player that's equal or bigger size. I just think it's all great for him. Like, I don't look at this as a disappointing season at all. I do think that, like, recognizing over the past, even if you want to use a 10-game span, like, yeah, I could say shoot the ball more for sure and find ways to score and be that guy that is a little similar to Malik Monk, who goes out and gets his. I would love to see that from him.
My problem isn't with Keegan Murray.
Oh, no, I know. Yeah, I know that.
My problem is with the design of the team, where Keegan has to be that every single moment of every single game. Like, he's the only guy that you have that can stop, name that player. Like, if you need him to go defend DeMar DeRozan, he's the guy until he got in foul trouble. He's the guy. If you need him to stop Michael Porter Jr., okay. If you need him to stop Jamal Murray, he's the guy. And so my point isn't that. My point is that, like go find a 3-and-D guy that specializes in
Sure.
that. So then that way you don't just have Keegan Murray as your lone defender who has to defend the toughest guy. Sometimes the other guy that's a really good defender that can hit a 3-ball but doesn't do all these other things, he can take on the toughest guy every night or take on the toughest guy for half a game. So Keegan Murray can actually get a break and actually go score. Because I think the ultimate, like, the next level up of this team, you would hope that it would be Keegan Murray averaging, 18 to 20 points a game and still playing great defense. Don't get me wrong, but playing great defense while also being a really good offensive player. And I think that that's got to be, like, going into this offseason, that has to be the priority. Like, you have to find the other guy. What I don't think necessarily need is like offensive specialists, which is what the Kings have at most of their positions now. Like a guy like Kevin Huerter is an offensive specialist. A guy like Harrison Barnes at this point in his career is an offensive specialist. Whether they're scoring or not, that doesn't matter. That's who they are as players. And so my point of view is that the next step for the Kings, the next iteration of the Kings, is to find guys that can play on the defensive end, so it's not just all on Keegan, and he can actually elevate and become the two-way player that you think he can. And I think going into year 3, he's going to be better prepared. He's going to understand that, like, what the rigors of an 82 game season is while playing both sides of the ball. I think rookie season he figured out like what 82 games look like as a 3-point specialist floating around the perimeter. In year 2, he's now realizing what it looks like to be a two-way player, and it just wears your ass out. And that's what he looks like at this point. Like, the numbers are like, I would like to say, hey, keep going out there and shooting. And even look at the Houston game. He came out aggressive, scored 8 points in the first quarter. Didn't do anything after that. Finished with 5 more points. Like,
That's on
that's
him.
not
That
part of it's
they
on
also
him.
adjusted. Yeah, they adjusted and put some clamps on him as well. And they did a tremendous job of eliminating the 3-point ball for them. And obviously they didn't hit any threes. So
Yeah.
I mean, how many shots did he take in that game?
11.
11.
3 of 11.
Yeah, 3 of 11.
5 from 3. He also was 7 of 7 from the free throw line. Second
Yeah.
most in his career.
Yeah.
Yeah. He needs to get to the line. Like,
Yeah.
I was hard on Buddy Hield for years for not getting the free throw line, but the Kings got like a whole team of Buddy Hields at this point. Nobody goes to the free throw line anymore. And when they do, they don't hit it. So not great. Okay, let's get to the business of basketball.
Dun-na-na, dun-na-na. That's the one you want, right, Sean?
No, that's ESPN. You got to do a different one.
But I did the other one last time and you fought it.
Well, because it was jarring. Wasn't it? How was it? Yeah.
See, what you need to give me other options here. You're not
You need
even
like a
trying,
horn or a buzzer
and you're
or
hating on
something.
me. No,
I'll
have to make the
see.
noise. No, don't get some
We'll
air
workshop it.
horn.
We'll
You
workshop
have to
it.
make the noise.
You guys are like little
Yeah,
brothers.
do an air
Get
horn.
out.
The backseat of a
horn.
car. Stop fighting.
No, air
No,
horn.
that's not an air horn. That's a buzzer.
Then you do it.
Stop fighting.
I don't think I can right now.
Oh my God, you were gonna do it. Oh, you're so.
You were. Come on, Sean.
I don't know.
What?
No.
What is that?
All right, I
what
take
that
it back.
is.
Don't try anymore.
Yeah, I won't try anymore.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
I love when Brenden does his high pitched laugh too. Crack me up. Brenden, did you have any factor caps for us? You did last time, and you never brought them out.
I did, and they are gone somewhere. But it was something along the lines of factor cap. Keon Ellis should be in the rotation every night.
That's a fact. Just from my point of view, I don't care whose minutes he's taken. Like, I watched him fight through screens and defend Jalen Green and defend other players that the Kings just don't have anyone else. Again, Mike pointed it out, and once he pointed it out, you see it all the time. How does Keon go under screens and still close on a 3-point shooter? How does he goes over screens, still gets there. He goes under screens, still gets there. A screen doesn't matter to him. Where I feel like every single time Davion Mitchell hits a screen, he gets hung up on it. Like, there is no, like, he doesn't know how to get through it. Now we're starting to see like the spin move off the screen, which is new. Fox and Keon both were doing it. Like, hey, that's new. Look at that spin move right off of the screen and right up to your opponent again. Like, whatever works, do it. I just, for me, he's a good enough 3-point shooter, shooting 38% on the season from 3. He brings a certain energy that, like, to be honest, I just think this team needs. He's like the defensive version of Malik Monk at a certain point, where he brings a different energy, and I would have him in my rotation. Like, not, he doesn't have to play 25 minutes a night, but I want him out there for 14 minutes and 7 minutes in the first half and 7 minutes in the second half and see what happens.
Yeah, I guess it's fact. I think think I think what he's done has been pretty consistent overall, especially with that. I like him and Davion together. I really do. I don't know that you can get by with doing that for like a regular rotation, like for an entire season length, right? Like we're seeing it in kind of a little bit of a small sample size right now, but it's worked pretty well. I've really liked that. But I also, the one thing I cringe at is oftentimes this team has a knack for looking at what the other team's doing and reacting rather than kind of going out there and just kind of setting their own way. And if Keon has a bad game, does it come at the expense? I don't want to see it to come at the expense of him for like the next 5 or 6, where maybe he doesn't play, or maybe it's even 3 or 4. Sasha Vezenkov might be back in the next week, 2 weeks, something like that. Does that wrinkle add anything to the rotation going forward? So I'd say for right now, yes. Do I think for the rest of the season? Not necessarily. I don't think it's that important, but I do feel like he's impacted the game the right way. I feel like there's a level of consistency with what he brings. But I do question if they can rely on it over a grander stretch of games. So that's my only hesitation.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there, actually. I think I was kind of going to lean Cap, but just for that specific wording of every game. I think if there's a slump, which I could see happening, I wouldn't hate them going away from it and maybe back in the direction of Chris Duarte, who's really, where the minutes have come from, that Keon's really taking, and a lot of 3-guard lineups, like Sean mentioned, whether it's De'Aaron, Malik, and Keon, or that second unit when De'Aaron checks out, you see a lot of Davion, Malik, and Keon all together. I think that's gone fairly well recently. Keon can shoot the ball, man. Like, yeah, he is a real shooter. And I feel good every time it goes up. I think he does a good job cutting. He's still, like, there was a play yesterday where you could tell everybody was just kind of thrown off. And I think it was Keon that maybe wasn't quite running the correct spot offensively. And I didn't think that Houston game was necessarily a great performance from him, but I do like a lot of what he provides out there. And he and Davion play defense. They both are very effective there, but they do it very differently. Davion is very physical, and Keon is very handsy. He's disruptive in that way. And like James, you mentioned the difference in getting through screens, that there's definitely a lot of variance between the two there. But I think Keon's good and deserves to keep getting an opportunity. But if he slumps a little bit, I wouldn't be surprised or hate to see them necessarily go in another direction. And I wouldn't be surprised either.
Yeah, I'd also point out too that like Davion Mitchell is playing really, really well right now. And for me, he's just not hesitating. He's not waiting. As soon as he's decisive in his actions, no matter what he's doing. And that's a big change for him. It's a huge change. And it's like, it's one of the few things that I think we've seen come out of like the players only meeting. Whatever was said around that time, all of a sudden that guy's been like shot out of a cannon. And he's just a different player when he's doing that, when he's aggressive. And I think, it's not that you need him to be this offensive juggernaut, but so often I see him standing out as somebody who's doing the wrong thing on the offensive side of the ball. And by that, I don't mean like dribbling way too much or like taking ill-advised shots.
He's just walking.
He's just not in the flow.
He needs to run.
He doesn't bring the ball fast enough. There's so many things that he does that are weird that just don't fit the style of play of the team. And so I'm liking what I'm seeing from him now, because all of a sudden you are seeing him kind of figure it out and fit in. And so I don't want to see Keon like take away all of Davion's minutes. But I also, like Kevin Huerter's got to figure things out. I don't think there's anything wrong with Kevin Huerter playing 20 minutes at this point, because, if he's not hitting his 3, then, he's having a tough time making an impact overall. And we've seen him be a better rebounder, and we've seen him like pick up the assists on occasion. But, that doesn't mean that he's doing that stuff consistently enough where you're like, oh, he's got to be on the court. I do think the 3-guard set when they go super small is really interesting with Davion, Keon, and Malik. And it's just kind of wild, kind of all over.
Davion had a moment last night before he lobbed that ball to Malik with that two-handed behind the back, which was just sick to finish that alley-oop. But Davion grabbed that board on the other end and then pushed it up the floor and led that break. That was one of probably the best plays of the season from what I'd seen from Davion to have that all in one kind of sequence. That was really impressive.
Well, Davion was the best 3-point shooter on the floor last night, technically.
Yeah.
Which, might say more about the other guys, but I think he's been shooting well. It feels like the Minnesota game to me is kind of one of the turning points in a way where De'Aaron doesn't play. Mike Brown shared that they told Davion before the game, we need your offense in this game. Davion's fast as hell. Very quick with the ball.
And that's what's frustrating when you see him walk the ball up. I said this in other podcasts. Go back and watch those preseason games. I know it's preseason, but he was flying in the preseason. And then you get into November and it's like, why'd he stop running?
Why are you running in mud? I mean, he got his opportunity early in the season with De'Aaron sitting 5 games right off the bat, and nothing. They had to go away from him.
It took everything in my power not to bring up his 3-point shooting to him last night. I talked to him in the locker room and I was like, no, I'll give it a minute just because, things have been going kind of well for him. It's like, there was a part of me that's like, do I even want to bring this up and have him speak on it and maybe jinx himself a little bit? I was like, maybe we'll give it another couple of games before we really shine a light on, hey, you're doing some big things beyond the arc. You put in a lot of work in the off season. It's kind of paying off now after going a little bit through some adversity. I don't know.
And they're all front or back misses now. I feel like earlier in the year, there were some really gross left and right, borderline wedgies, or there's one off the side of the backboard early this year. They feel online and on target so far.
It's a crazy arc is back to a little bit. The last couple of games you've seen, oh, look, he's throwing the ball way up high. Look, I just don't want the hesitation. If you're out there for a reason, shoot it. You're out there and just look like you fit in, because he doesn't fit in on the defensive side of the ball because he's the only one playing defense. So you're like, hey man, you stand out because you're actually trying really hard and a lot of others aren't. But on the offensive end, you have to find a way to not stand out and in a good way. And so I think he's starting to do that, which is good. His teammates trust him. They fired the ball to him for those open threes and he's hit them. So, I don't know. It's been one of those weird ones. I guess that was our business of basketball. We did a factor cap.
One other factor cap, if you guys would like.
Yeah,
let's hear it.
Factor cap. Malik Monk will win Sixth Man of the Year. It's the odds-on favorite pretty much everywhere. Other candidates, Naz Reid, Karis LeVert, Bobby Portis, Norman Powell, Tim Hardaway Jr. was a hotter name earlier. Kind of feels like Malik's running away with this one now.
I think he's got it locked up.
Yeah. He's almost to 16 points a game. I know we've been waiting for player X, player Y, player Z to step up. Malik Monk just keeps taking it. And the fact that he's averaging, 5.3 assists per game is crazy coming off the bench. You know what he's turned into is Lou Williams. Really.
But great. Better. It's not
Lou
so
Williams
much of a...
was freaking
No, he was
incredible.
fantastic, but he was also a chucker. He takes a ton of shots. I think Malik is such a playmaker these days to where, I feel like it's just got a better energy than even and I like Lou Williams a lot, but the guy took a lot of shots. He was also in position to take a lot of shots throughout his teams that he was on. But
yeah, I don't know, man. I think there was 1 or 2 seasons where Lou got up to 20 something points per game, but
right.
We're talking about a guy who averaged 11 shots per game for his career. And not only that, but when he was great with the Clippers, with him and Montrezl Harrell, they were incredible in that pick and roll. There were 3 years in a row where he averaged 5.3, 5.4, and 5.6 assists per game. And, I think if anything, Lou Williams, it took him longer to get to the point where Malik is, just to be an all around player. But I don't know. Lou is a phenomenal player.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. So, and I like what Monk is doing. I'm going to say yes, Monk wins it. The guy that I worry about for some reason, because I looked at the betting odds today on this because I don't know who put it out there, like NBA Central or whatever. It's like Monk at -240. So if it takes $240 to win 100, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like the fifth guy down the list is Norman Powell, and Norman Powell is playing out of his mind right now. And because he plays in a major market, I worry that he's going to get a little bit more fanfare.
Well, the
But
team's better too, statistically.
yeah,
I mean, or win-loss record. Yeah.
Nas Reed is also going crazy recently.
well, now he's going to start a bunch of games too with Towns out.
Right.
So,
I mean, Malik's got better numbers than all three, especially when it comes to assist numbers. So, yeah, it's.
Well, no, he's averaging way more points per game as well.
Points, yeah,
I mean,
as well.
Yeah, I think Norman Powell's down at like 13-7 or something. He's like a good 2 points behind him in points per game.
The one that has the most balance, though, if you had to pick one, I mean, Karis LeVert might have the most balance next to Malik in terms of statistically across the board, and Cavs are pretty good.
Yeah,
I don't love watching Karis LeVert play. He doesn't have,
Bogdanovich. Bogey also isn't a bad shout. I know he's beginning to kind of start. He's the only guy averaging more points than Malik coming off the bench. Malik's also second in assists from bench players, barely behind TJ McConnell. But Malik is more efficient from the field.
Yeah.
It's just Atlanta's ass.
Right.
I mean,
and then if you look at the usage too, like Malik's usage is up, everything. So
actually his usage isn't. I looked today. His usage is the same or a little bit less than it was last year.
It's funny because I asked him today, like, how do you think you've gotten better as a player? And he said the usage. And yeah, I looked when he said that, James, and yeah, usage is right there. There is like a 4 or 5 minute difference in minutes for what it's worth, but usage is about the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're averaging the same usage, but you increase your minutes by 4 minutes per game, that means you're just going to have more opportunity. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. All right, let's get to final thoughts. What do we got? What do we got from you, Sean? Final thoughts.
End of an era. I mean, I guess it could come back for the 49ers, and that means something. But I'm betting Eric Armstead finds some money elsewhere, and just don't want to see him in the NFC West. But yeah, end of an era. Sad to see my guy off the Niners. But doesn't mean he can't come back. Whether maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, whatever. But it's tougher when you're 30 years old and you have surgery on a meniscus, and he'll be ready for camp. But he's, it's kind of what I was alluding to when it's like, yeah, you're a team that has to end up paying a lot of people. You're going to have some different personnel. And he was the longest tenured 49er and third on on their highest paid list at that point by the time they let him go. So yeah, it's tough to see him go, but I think he's going to find a good payday somewhere, especially the way these defensive tackles get paid in this league.
Yeah, good dude. Great in the community. Great with children. Like he's got his clubs and the stuff that he does with children there in Elk Grove. Yeah, he's like super impactful dude. Yeah, so bummed to see him get he's going to get released by the 49ers. It sounded like they did try to renegotiate with him.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think it's completely a foregone conclusion that he's out. There's always a possibility that the market just isn't there for him, especially since he's undergoing surgery or he has undergone surgery again this offseason. But yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah. And there's some people that someone put it out there. It's like, it's a cleanup procedure. It's not. It's a torn meniscus. He played with it. He missed 5 games because of it. He was sensational while playing with it in the playoffs. But nonetheless, it's a torn meniscus. And, it's a 6 to 8 week injury, and he'll be ready for camp.
Yeah, Carl Anthony Towns just underwent meniscus surgery for meniscus tear. Brenden, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I feel like I'm gonna start watching a little bit of baseball this year.
What?
Not a lot, but we're starting from literally probably catching, I don't know, probably single-digit innings all of last season, including playoffs. So we're at a low starting point, but I feel like I'm gonna tune in a little bit this year.
James, he said this. Yeah, he says this wearing the proper A's hat.
For me, I'm not gonna lie.
But
I'll wearing an A's hat.
I'll support both. Is it? Do we know where we're at with the A's coming to Sacramento thing? I should be keeping closer tabs on this, but it's still TBD, right?
Yeah, it's still a hot mess.
Yeah, if they're there, I'll go all the time just for fun.
Now, see, I love baseball, and typically I watch like 120 to 140 games a year. Like I watch a ton of baseball.
God, that's so many.
The
That's a
last
lot.
like 2 years though, I just can't do it. Sometimes I'll watch on like one time speed. Like and then when somebody, I can watch the pitch count in the top corner, and then I'll stop and like watch in regular motion. But I do like to watch a lot of baseball. And now that the A's are just incompetent assholes and need to be shot into space, their ownership team needs to be literally like tarred and feathered. Management as well. Yeah, but outside of that, like I'm gonna give up baseball if they leave. So it'll free up some of my time. But I love to watch. Even if I watch it, I record and watch it a little bit later. Yeah. So
Baseball
try.
becomes the everyday friend. Like from here on, once opening day on, like you have it every single day. You can tune in, watch the game. It's there for you. Maybe there's a day off after every week and a half or so. It's just always there. And especially if you're not covering, but if you're following a favorite team of yours, it's so much fun. I say get into it. I like I like what MLB also does on their YouTube page, by the way, if you haven't seen it, where they condense the games to basically just show you what you need to see. They do a really good job with that.
Yeah, it's going to be a background thing for me, but we're going to try.
Okay. I'm down.
And
I'm
an
down
everyday friend does not sound good, Sean. I need my days to myself. Like, leave
There's
me
a-
the hell alone every
There's
day.
a
God damn.
there's a romanticism about baseball, right? Everyone talks about it, and that's the way I look at it. Like I always get whether my team is good or not. Doesn't I mean it certainly matters, but I still like baseball enough to where when the World Series ends, it's a little sad because I love summer and spring so much that when the World Series ends, like it's just the finality of there's no more baseball and now it's cold and dreary the rest of the until it's springtime again. So
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I like my bar is filled with baseball stuff. Like the baseball's behind me, the baseball's autograph baseball's here, like all kinds of baseball pictures everywhere. I'm just a huge, huge, huge baseball fan, and but to watch things unfold like they have in Oakland is just disgusting. And the commissioner needs to be fired and sent away, and he's a boob, and so are the owners and management. And anyway, that's not my final thoughts. My final thoughts.
Oh, I saw that look out the window.
I'm ready for the
It's a quick
rain
one.
to be gone. I'm kind of in Sean's boat
thank
now.
you.
I'm ready. I'm ready for summer. I'm ready to be out on the boat, and I'm also ready for this Kings team to man, just show us that you can find an identity. Like figure it out really quickly that like who you want to be, and go for it, because it sure does feel like that's been one of the biggest things missing this entire season. Just a lack of identity. It's frustrating to watch. Okay, I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. Make sure you're going to Fox 40 and seeing all the great work that Sean is doing. Sean, what is your Twitter handle? We don't usually do that, but at Sean
Cunningham.
At Sean Cunningham. And then Brenden, you can follow Brendan's work wherever he does work.
Wonder where that is.
Yeah, where is that?
Website.
It's a website. It's a website. And Brenden, where can they find you on the Twitter box?
That would be Brenden Nunes, NBA.
And then where can they find you on Threads? Because you're on the Threads a lot.
Yeah, we're not going to go with Instagram. I think Threads is just Brenden Nunes, which I guess would lead you to Instagram. It's the same as Instagram.
Yeah, it's the same. Threads
Sean,
and Instagram. Mine is almost the same. It's Sean.Cunningham because some dickhead has my name.
God,
damn it. Yeah, so make sure you're following their work everywhere. Make sure to tune into the Insiders Monday through Friday from 10 to noon on ESPN 1320 and give Kyle and I a listen. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast, brought to you by Prize Picks. We're also Blue Wire Podcast. So tune into all that stuff. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up, rating and review, all that stuff. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber. We'll see you very soon. Thanks for tuning in for the Kings Beat podcast for Box 40. Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 The Kings Beat.